right wing doom, it's worth it. How to talk to your right wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to the entire world receiving our signals via the magic of the internet. How are my people doing this morning? I trust everybody's doing just fine. Good morning, studio, and let's pass it on to you.
Well, good morning, Egberto. It is Tuesday morning at the radio, the 8th of April. Got to say happy birthday to Steve Wilson. Haven't seen him in decades, but I still remember his birthday. One of my best friends in high school. I was looking at the article in the Atlantic today, or this morning, as a matter of fact, and remember what I said a while back. Remember, the politician you buy today is the politician that will knife you in the back tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if we remember the inauguration with Bezos and Zuckerberg and all the big wigs and the big money, guess what's happening to them now? They are losing fortunes.
Yes,
So
they are.
there you go. Didn't I warn you? Didn't I say the politician you buy today is a politician that will cost you tomorrow? Well, Jeff, well, Zuckerberg, all I got to say is you got what was coming to you. There you go.
That's
They
what
sure
you get.
did.
Yep, sucking up to a madman. Jack, what you got? You got a full page of wisdom here, who was having technical difficulties with his pen this morning. All right, man, what you got?
All right. Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
Good morning, my brother. Talk to me.
All right. Why doesn't America work at having some honor again? Look at what we've become, a pariah, rich beyond what is decent, as we inflict great harm to the world and its people for profit. It's shameful. Trump just shows how cheap and lazy the oligarchs are. They don't want to pay their taxes. They don't want to take responsibility for the dirty dealing they do. They don't want to pay their fair share into social programs. And when their corporation fails, who bails them out? Old John Q. Taxpayer. Honesty, honor, ethics, integrity is what we want from our politicians. What we're getting are politicians willing to sell the people out to corporate interests for corporate bribes, courtesy of the Supreme Court of the United States Citizens United decision that says money equals free speech. Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I see you swirling around to the tidy bowl, man.
I tell you, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Anyway, folks, Jack, that was the word of wisdom from the one and only Brother Jack. Isn't it great having Brother Jack's voice back? That raspy,
Yeah.
sexy voice back. You know what I mean? Huh,
Yeah,
Jack?
Betty's happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Betty's got this big crush on Jack.
I'm going to start calling you Betty Jack.
No, you don't. No.
No, not if
I'm
you want your
kidding.
show to stay on the radio, you
I'm
won't.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Look, I'm gonna do nothing to mess with Brother Jack, man. Are you kidding me? Anyway, folks, welcome aboard. Glenn Ryan is already in the chat, as well is El Senor Brother Ray. Ray was great seeing Ray at the Houston Peace and Justice event this weekend. He was there and having fun with the rest of us as we all network together with all these different organizations that's doing some great social justice work here, not only in Houston but around the country. And Glenn Ryan is still giving me a hard time about Cory Booker. Glenn, we are in agreement, sir. We understand his vote on Israel and we understand the power of money. We understand that these folks understand how to be bifurcated, and the portion of their bifurcation that we use is the one that benefits us all. That is what we got, Glenn, until we make the change that we say we want to make. But we have got to do the work to get there. And it has to be the work that shows us. You wrote a paper for us on your pathway. I think you know what? I said we were going to cover that. We'll cover that. I need to bring back up your paper and actually cover it, and we should probably get you to call in while we're covering your paper. Anyhow, I want to start here. Yesterday, I got a call from an activist in town, and they said, "Are you watching the state senate hearings? Guess who's on?" It was our former district attorney, Kim Ogg, out there supporting a Republican bill to change certain misdemeanors into felonies. And as an example, she used the Hidalgo staffer case where pretty much she lost, right? Every single one of them were, well, two of them were acquitted, and the other ones were all but acquitted. But this thing about it is, when Hidalgo staffers came up about that bogus charge on giving that contract to a one-person operation, not they never mentioned that this is, in modus operandi in government contracting deals, all that kind of stuff. But anyhow, so she tried to use that, and West, Senator West, uh, asked her a question as far as these people are concerned, and he said, "Wait a minute, they were all acquitted? Well, two of the three were acquitted, and the other one was given some sort of a adjudication." And he said, "Was there any restitution to anything?" No. So you had a weak case. You really didn't have anything to prove what happened with all that media attention that you got, right? Well, we don't know, but that was exactly what it is. But I want you to listen to this piece that I did yesterday on that hearing in Senator hearing, because Molly Cook, who is a senator from District 15, Senate District 15, she was the what I think was the best interrogator of Kim Ogg. And Kim Ogg used to purport to be a Democrat, but she's always supporting recessive Republican bills. I want you to listen to how uh, Molly Cook, one of our local Democrats, young local Democrats that are out there fighting, and I want you to check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side. I just listened to a clip that was made aware to me by one of our local political activists. So I went back to the whole system and watched the whole setup, and it went like this: former Houston District Attorney Kim Ogg went to Austin to support Senator Paul Bettencourt's new Bill 2046, that turned a misdemeanor into a felony for directing government contracts maybe to a friend or whatever. And she made a whole big deal out of, in effect, the standard Republican line: lock him up, lock him up. Let's be clear here. I want an honest government that passes contracts to people that are deserving of the contract. And as we know, in governmental contracting, whenever one of the good old boys don't get a contract, if a small company gets a contract or whatever, what they attempt to do is say there was something nefarious that got that small company a contract. And that's what Kim Ogg, who is was a Democratic district attorney in Houston, who always went after Democrats and allowed Republicans to get away with pretty much anything they wanted to get away, which including what many of us believe are crimes. She went against Judge Lina Hidalgo, one of the first Latina judge and youngest of the largest county in Texas, the third largest in the country. She went after her and got three of her seniors indicted for supposedly doing this with government contracts. Now, Kim Ogg used that as an example to why the Texas legislature should support these bills, this new bill by Paul Bettencourt. And Senator West asked a few questions. He said, "Wait a minute, you had those three people you indicted, right?" "Yes." "And what was the result of that case?" "Well, two of them were acquitted, and the other one formed some side of a deal. Did any of them go to jail? No. Did any one of them did any kind of restitutions? No. Does any of this require any penalties on these people? No. So in other words, you had a very weak case. You didn't have a case. Well, not exactly. Well, you had a weak case. I am a lawyer. That's what West is saying. I'm a lawyer, and I know Miss Kim Ogg and whatever other attorney was there with you. If you try to indict these three people and somehow they walk, that means you had a weak case. But the thing is, she wanted to lock people up. And the idea being that is what she would do. And God knows, changing this from misdemeanor to a felony could easily get folks, if she had a weak case, but suppose she got a jury that still convicted these folks, they could be put away for several years. Well, it was time for Senator Molly Cook, our senator from this area, to question her. And since she said that the reason you wanted it to make it a felony is to increase the reasons that people won't be doing these crimes, they'll deter them from trying to direct contracts. And Molly Cook had a simple answer. Senator Molly Cook had a simple question. Do you have the data to show that this type of deterrence would stop this from occurring? We don't want to just write laws that lock people up if it doesn't serve the purpose, its intended purpose, to stop this activity of people getting contracts they don't deserve. She gave a long response. Molly Cook comes back and says, but does it? Well, I tell you what, why don't you listen to how Molly Cook just about knocked her out on this one, and then we'll take it on the other side because it was epic.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. So what I've read is that the certainty of being caught is more powerful a deterrent than the punishment itself. Can y'all speak to what you were doing on the county level to increase oversight and auditing in these processes? And as someone who represents 1 million Harris County residents, I can tell you we really want everybody out of the news and not committing crimes. I'm not really eager to just see everybody thrown in jail.
What is the question, Senator?
What were you doing to try to prevent this from happening?
Well, I'm testifying here that there should be stronger penalties, so anybody who thinks that they can circumvent the law will think twice.
What data do you have to support that deterrents are the most powerful mechanism rather than the certainty of being caught, like increasing oversight?
Well, people don't like to go to jail for the most part.
I'd like to see data, not anecdotal references.
Well, in terms of deterrence data, I didn't bring any, but I think that all of us have shared the responsibility and liability of being public officials, and I think we understand our responsibility to the public. And when we violate that responsibility, I think that the public wants us to be held accountable, and that's why I'm here supporting Senator Betancourt's bills.
I heard no data today.
On deterrence in general, no, ma'am.
Thank you.
So as you see, here is Kim Ogg, who was the former Democratic district attorney, constantly supporting bills that have the values of Republicans, which are valueless and simply attempting to always lock people up, whether deserved or undeserved. And, there we had Kim Ogg ready to support Paul Betancourt to lock more people up. And what Senator Molly Cook is trying to say is, don't you think instead of trying to create deterrence and locking people up, that you should probably create structures that make sure this stuff doesn't happen? Instead of going for the law and order crap, stop it from happening in the first place. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. If you want to stop crime, create programs that make crime not look advantageous. That is our policies. Instead of having kids running around and then throwing the book at them, create programs that have kids doing the right thing, having them keeping busy. In the case of adults, make it that if to commit a crime in a government contract, because it is so open, you can't do it, otherwise you're exposed. That is what prevents it from occurring. Systemic changes and not not a false deterrence by by locking people up, because the same people that take advantage of getting all these government contracts every single time, they will continue to win, and those small people who are looking for contracts, etc., won't get them, because folks are going to say, well, if you gave that little contract to that person, maybe we should do some sort of investigation that now can become felonious. Folks, this was a knockout punch by Senator Molly Cook and former District Attorney Kim Ogg, who the progressive base of the Democratic Party removed from office. This is what we actually, not removed from office, removed from the party, and then voted her out of office. Anyway, folks, I thought this is an important one for people to see: democracy in action, and a senator who actually did the work and asked the pertinent questions. Actually, Kim Ogg was admonished by the party, not removed from the party, but admonished by the party. It was a big event that day. It was amazing because, nobody thought she would have gotten the admonishment support that she got. A lot of people did their job. On Substack, LBW says, "Good morning, y'all. Lauren from Kingwood, Texas." Good morning, Lauren. How are you doing? I have a lot more in Substack, but no messages from you. But Lauren is the only one that actually has a message in Substack. So anyway, folks, remember the telephone number: 713-526-5738, 713-526-5738. Very important issue there. Our people working for us in Austin, Texas, support that is, you support those senators who are doing the job and not just letting others run roughshod over the population. All right, I have another piece I want to play. I think it was on Friday, Jacqueline Campisci from Katy. Good morning on the chat. There was well, there are a lot of Social Security office protests going around, not only the state, but all over the country. And Neil Aquino was at one and did some live interviews for us there with people and why they're doing the Social Security. Why are they at that Social Security doing the protesting? So what I want to do is I want to play a piece that we did on Neil's visit to that area. Steve Ratner does it again, explaining quite a bit about the tariffs. But before we get into Steve Ratner, I want to make some points here. The working class always pays. The working class always pays. The plutocracy always does what's best for them. Now, here's the interesting thing. Back in the early days when we were complaining about offshoring and sending products overseas to be built overseas, our government, because of the tutelage they receive from their benefactors, the plutocracy, they didn't think about what it's doing to the current employment base. A few union workers complained and they raised hell, but they never did the job to protect the workers. And to some extent, and this is where we have to take some personal responsibility, we had too many workers falling for the okie doke. We had too many workers believing in the things conservatives were telling them. And conservative ideology, neoliberal ideology, what I mean by neoliberal Democrats as well as conservatives, screwed the working class. And how did they do that? They allowed the offshoring, etc. So we have a pseudo populist in Donald Trump comes and says, "I'm going to fix all of this stuff for you guys." And he goes ahead and he wins, barely wins, but he wins an election because a lot of folks believe in the fallacies and their racial prejudices, their gender prejudices. All these things formed a nasty bubble that allowed a Donald Trump to come back into office. Anyway. So now he believes he's going to, because people know that tariffs will likely make a lot of foreign stuff expensive, he can cower that. He can tell people, oh, this is going to help you in the long run, etc. And many of his sycophants are liable to believe it. But what Steve Radner points out is, look, the genie been taken out of the bottle. You can't stick it back in. You have to create new avenues to enrich, new avenues to pump up the working class. Because what the plutocracy has done in the way it has moved manufacturing around isn't something that can be fixed in a year or 2 or 3 at all. And the pain that it will take to get it fixed is not borne by the plutocracy. It will be borne by the American people. And unless the government were to start shoving money into the American people's pocket so that they can then purchase products from the private sector that's going to be retooling over here, and at the same time put some price controls on those companies as they rebuild, and that price control, etc., would be a penalty for them having been traders to America. Until we've done that, but no American government is going to do that. So as such, we have to create new avenues. So let's go ahead and listen to what Steve Radner has to say here, and then we'll take it on the other side.
In 1988, Dick Gephardt and a lot of Democrats were fighting for tariffs. They were fighting for what they would call fair trade, lost that fight. A lot of populist Republicans that came in with me, including myself, were arguing the same thing in the mid-90s. And here we are 30, 40 years later. And the question is, can you get those jobs back? Because people like Dick Gephardt lost that fight back in the 1980s. Can it be unwound? Most economists say it cannot. Most of Wall Street says it cannot. And yesterday suggested that they basically let their money talk on what they believed regarding tariffs.
Yeah, Joe, look, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. We can spend a lot of time, kind of like who lost Vietnam. We can spend a lot of time debating what happened in the 90s and the early 2000s and how we ended up with a much, much larger trade deficit and many fewer manufacturing jobs. But what's done is done. Let's take a look at a couple of those numbers. Let's start with the stock market yesterday. We talked about the almost 5% drop. This is actually $5 trillion of wealth lost since the inauguration. The stock market had already been starting to go down as people got more and more nervous about what Trump was or wasn't going to do. So a huge drop. But here's what's actually quite interesting. The stock market drop here was actually larger than the stock market drop in every other major index, every other major country. In Japan, it was down 2.8%. In Europe, it was down 2.6%. In the UK, just 1.6%. And in China, just 0.6%. So why is that? Trump thinks he's hurting all these people. He thinks everything is, a negotiation where somebody wins and somebody loses, and he thought he was the winner, and we turned out to be the loser. And the answer is because, based on a set of projections from the Budget Lab up in New Haven, we are the loser. The impact of this, the long-run impact on GDP of this, is actually going to be, projected anyway, to be worst on the U.S. of any other major country that we trade with, except for Canada. Canada has a special problem. They export a lot of oil to us. We are net oil exporters, but we do bring in some Canadian oil for complicated reasons I'll spare you. But essentially, they believe that we will have the worst economic impact. What actually could be positive in the UK. Trump's tariffs on the UK are only 10% of among the lowest. The EU, a tenth of a percent, Mexico, a tenth, and so on. And China, only negative 0.2, because these countries have other things they can do. Their consumers are not going to be paying the cost of these tariffs because they're on the other side of it. And therefore, they are actually going to have slightly better economies than they would have had. So the irony is we're the worst. And yes, in terms of that JP Morgan projection, I think we are definitely in the 60% recession odds for this year. This economy is going to soften materially.
Let's move to your second chart, Steve, putting this into some historical perspective.
And you can see back in 1980, tariffs have been coming down for a long time since World War II. But you can see in 1980, we have a meaningful tariff rate. But then this is what Joe was talking about. All the trade agreements agreements brought our tariff rate down to just around 2%. This circle is Trump-Biden. You can see Trump did some tariffs in his first term. Tariff rate went up a little bit. This is, for all of his talk in the first term, this is all that happened. Biden brought them down part way, and now we have this. And this, going across here, this is 1909. The last time we had tariffs at this level was in 1909. Now, many of us studied in school about the recession and about how we put tariffs on. Some say that it caused the recession. It didn't, but it exacerbated the recession. The famous Smoot-Hawley tariffs. That tariff rate here was actually a little under 20%. So these are not only the highest tariff rates we've had in more than a century, but higher than we had when we had what every historian would tell you were the worst tariffs we've ever put in place until now. So let's turn to some of the individual impacts, because obviously the market goes down, but all the other stocks do different things. And so we had a fairly disparate impact. And there are good reasons, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll give you a couple of examples. Nike down 14%. All of, I shouldn't say all, probably virtually all of their clothing and their shoes and their sneakers and so forth are made in Southeast Asia, which have some of the highest tariff rates, as we'll talk about in a minute. Boeing is a huge exporter of planes to other countries. Those countries can now buy Airbuses. Could be really bad for Boeing's business. Apple makes virtually every iPhone that they sell in China. 54% tariff coming into effect there. Amazon, you would be surprised at how many packages you order from Amazon that are actually shipped directly to you from somewhere overseas where they're made, and a high tariff will now be paid. JP Morgan, the banks could be facing pressure for another reason, and so on and so forth. I'll just mention quickly down here, Walmart and Costco. Why did they do comparatively well? Because they have such buying power that they are likely to be able to hold down their price increases and take market share from other retailers.
All right, let's move to your last chart, Steve, and it's time for a little math.
I'm going to do my best to help, but their math would not get them through math class either. The economics wouldn't get through economics class. The math isn't going to get through math class. But let's talk about what they did. So first of all, just to put some stark numbers next to it, you can see these are our top trading partners, European, and what the tariff rates are going to be. European 20%. China is actually now 54% because he added 20% earlier in the year, so that gets up to 54. Japan 24, South Korea 25, Taiwan 32. You'll notice China, Mexico and Canada are not on here because he did separate deals with them also, and they will pay some tariffs, but he does have that trade agreement he negotiated with them before. But one of the points I want to make is that some of the highest tariff rates, the way he did this, and I'll explain that in just one second, some of the highest tariff rates are under some of the poorest, most struggling countries in the world. And so Bangladesh is now going to pay a 37% tariff rate on stuff they sell to us. South Africa, 30%, and so on. So this is going to cut our purchases from these countries dramatically. It is going to hurt these countries' economies dramatically. It is not just bad economics, it's bad foreign policy, and it's inhumane. So you ask, how do they calculate it? I'm sure everybody has seen this formula before. I'm joking. And I'm not going to go through it all, but we got a lot of Greek letters. We got phi, we got all this stuff. But basically, Willie, it comes down to what you just said. The way they think about this, they think that if there is a trade deficit, then by definition, the other country is manipulating trade, and therefore they calculate the tariff based on the size of the trade deficit relative to how much they send us. So the bigger the trade deficit relative to what they send us, the higher the tariffs. It makes no sense. You're not going to find an economics professor on the planet who's going to tell you this is the right way to look at it, but it's emblematic of the whole mess they've created.
All right, Steele Ratner nails it, right? Look, Steve is a neoliberal economist as well. Don't ever think otherwise. But that doesn't mean that his accuracy in what he's talking about needs to be questioned. The thing about it here is the following. Yes, the genie is out of the bottle. You can't stick her back in, but we sure can create policies, progressive policies to mitigate all these issues. We can create progressive policies that starts to rebuild factories, and we could do this. We could say, I tell you what, private sector, we want factories that build these things. You don't build it, the American people will build it, produce products out of that factory. And you know what? Because there will be no incentive for shareholders and executives, those prices would automatically be cheaper than if you make it. So you start building your factories now, or we'll start building them and employing the American people at a high wage. And at the same time, instead of giving the money to shareholders, we give it to workers and create a product at a lower price. You guys decide whether you want a more collective economy or a more corporate economy. And I tell you what, watch how quickly these guys start to manufacture and manufacture more efficiently. There's a lot of things that can be done if you have the fortitude, the moral fortitude to exact it out of those who've been stealing from us for decades since the inception of this country. And I want to expand on what I said there, because here's the deal. America, rather, we constantly ask the working class, the middle class, to pay for the corporate failures. I want to express the end of that, because as soon as I make that statement, I can understand where you're going to have right people on the right saying, what are you saying? Government owning industry? That is communism. Not really, but I want to make a point here. Right now, back in the 60s and 70s, as we started exporting jobs, right? I mean, exporting, building our products overseas. In effect, that was exporting jobs. I want you to listen to this keenly. What that meant is corporations found that China, Vietnam, well, not Vietnam then, but China and other countries, since their labor was so cheap and since their environmental laws were so lax, it is a lot cheaper to build a product overseas. And therefore, the factories that were here would be gone. If you take a look at the textile alley back in the Carolinas and other places, gone. The garment factories in New York, gone overseas, because they could make it much cheaper overseas and then ship it here. And that's fine, right? That is capitalism, the efficient allocation of resources. And if you can allocate resources in China and get a better allocation, fine. It does nothing for humanity, but it works. Now, Americans paid the price as those jobs got exported. The workers that lost their jobs, and by having more workers in America without jobs, it depresses the entire salary base, because there are more people vying for a job, right? There are more people wanting the same job. Therefore, the employer doesn't have to pay all that much. So it depresses the entire working class as it enriches the rich, because why? As they build the products cheaper overseas, their profit margins become that much larger. So we, the American people, paid the price with lower employment, lower wages for having these products made overseas. But that was chosen by the corporations. Now there are also some caveats, right? If there is a snowstorm in one of these big cities that have these big factories, right? It affects our supply chain. If there's a pandemic, because we're building all this stuff overseas, it affects the supply chain. If there is a hurricane and several ships get overturned in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific or wherever, the supply chain gets broken, and it means there are higher prices. And who pay those again? We, the working class, again pays the higher prices because these corporate heathens decided to build everything or a large percentage overseas. And to further put some salt in the wound, they create something called JIT, just in time inventory, which means not only do they build the products overseas, but they don't store enough on American soil. They don't keep a reserve enough on American soil, so that in the case of disruptions of this supply chain, Americans are not going to be sucked again with paying the price of the ineptitude or the selfishness and greed of the corporate sector. And that's what happened, in fact, with the pandemic, right? We always, We always bear the burden. And every time we bear the burden, it's not a break even for corporations. They make even more money on the burden. You want an example? Let's take an example for oil shipments. Well, oil is not good because we're oil positive. Um, let's go ahead and take an example: garments that are going to Walmart, and the supply chain is broken. All right, the ships have sunk, etc. So we're going to have a 3 month supply chain lag. What Walmart does to the prices in the store, they raise the prices of those garments in the store. But guess what, guys? The garments didn't cost any more to make. Those garments were made on cheap labor, but the price goes up because there's a false scarcity, right? And as that price goes up and the price of the product really stayed the same, your pain of paying more for that garment means even more money for the rich person. Why again? Because guess what? The price of manufacture didn't change. So they make more money for selling less product. So they are always on the winning side of the equation. And my type of solution says, well, you know what? We're going to call your bluff. You always want to be on the winning side? Okay, let's make the working class be on the winning side. We want to have at least one garment factory that makes cloth. All right, we don't make machines that make cloth. We don't make any of these things anymore. So any corporations, go ahead and build it. Nobody build it. The government goes ahead and builds it, and they go ahead and hire people. And guess what? Guess what's the overhead? There's no executive to pay bonuses to. There are no shareholders to sell for profit. So all of that money that would have gone into the capitalist formation of a corporation now goes into the government. And if some corporation later wants to say, no, I want to be in that business, hey, be my guest, come on in, right? But the government could actually act as a damper, as a buffer to the greed of corporations and put some balance into these things. Look, it's above my pay grade to do it, to have all those intricacies. But you know what, guys? If we really had a government by and of the people, we would create those mechanisms to force the corporate sector not from bleeding us dry for absolutely everything, but for actually keeping a balance to make sure we all have equal access to success. We all have equal access to everything. Anyway, 713-526-5738 is the number. Don't wait till too late. 713-526-5738. Let's go to Brother Patrick, who's on the line. First call of the day.
Hey, good morning. How are y'all?
Good morning, my brother. Talk to me.
Hey, yeah, I wanted to point out because of conservative policy, the last half of Clinton's administration and all of Bush's administration, there was a huge push for globalization, and what that meant was moving good jobs that we had here and factories here to China. And what's really interesting, if my memory is correct, is that was subsidized by taxpayer dollars.
Yes, it was.
So 25, 30 years has passed, and we took taxpayer dollars to move all these factories outside the United States. And now when we decide, well, that wasn't such a good plan, they turn around and it's up to the commons again to pay for this. Because the idea, it's not going to work, but the idea that Trump has is if we make things so expensive overseas, these factories will move back. Well, the way we're making them expensive is by taxing the commons.
I want to give it even more intensity than that, Patrick, right? Because remember the CHIPS Act that Biden passed, right? In effect, we subsidize them to leave, and we are also subsidizing them to come back. And anytime a government gives a subsidy, who is it that pays the bill again? Who pays the taxes? We do. So we are the CHIPS Act. We are given subsidies to build all these chip factories in America again. And my contention is, instead of building, giving the just money to the private sector to rebuild this stuff, why not make it an investment in the company where we have a stake, so that as those stocks go up, as those dividends are paid, some of it goes to the government, since it's our investment that is building the factory back here in the United States. It is fair. It is just like when we pay for the medicines in the college and universities, and the capitalist companies take them, the university doesn't get dividends and doesn't get a share of the profits for that which they created. Only the shareholders and executives get it. That is what's inherently unfair. And when we talk about, it's always the working class that gets hit. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, with that said, we might think about pushing our representatives to start thinking about subsidizing co-ops.
I agree 100%. That is something that if you can subsidize a corporation, it's even more efficient to subsidize a co-op. I'm with you. Absolutely. Anything else, brother, before I go to Ray?
No, that's just what I wanted to point out. And sorry about Saturday. I had a bad battery and I couldn't get a ride to get another one until Sunday.
No problem, my brother. We'll meet another time. We have a whole lot of functions with the Houston Peace and Justice Center, so we'll let you know when we're having the next. All right?
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. All right, let's go to brother Ray. Come on in, Ray. And by the way, Razi Ferron from Substack says hello. How you doing, Razi? Come on in, Ray.
Oh yeah, bonjour. I'm
Bonjour.
actually in the word. I'm feeling my Louisiana roots, and this morning a word that comes to mind that I learned in one of my social studies class, that basically is a nutshell of where we are, is laissez-faire.
There you go. Yes, sir.
I don't know why, maybe they didn't take the class that I took when I was in, I don't know, middle school, high school, but I learned, that this form of government, in its definition, is a horrible idea. And yet you elect the person that basically is going to say, I'm going to siphon all the money out of your pocket, because screw those foreign countries. America has to eat that cost, And I just don't understand. It even comes down to the Texas politicians. Listen, Republican voters, listen to what they say. They always say we're willing to take a little pain. Our voters are okay with it. They always speak for the amount of pain that you're willing to tolerate, the amount of pain. Listen to the Texas politicians, listen to the U.S. politicians tell you that they're basically willing to sacrifice you for their own benefit, and yet you still support them. And that's the indoctrination you talk about, Egberto.
And that is what. Let me tell you, Ray, one of the reasons I dedicated myself to do what we're doing here and to write articles, substacks, newsletters, books, the whole shebang, is I'm always of the belief that disinfecting and putting the light on is a good disinfector, right? Disinfectant. Because the truth of the matter is, what Republicans and neoliberal Democrats do is they depend on the ignorance of people. And people are ignorant, not many times, not by choice, but they are just damn tired. Americans work so hard. When they're done working, they don't necessarily want to sit down and listen to a politics done right. They want to go ahead and chill out with a program that doesn't require a lot of thinking, that just makes them laugh. So we have to try to find whatever form we can to get into these folks' minds to say, please think on your own. Please think for yourself. But thank you so kindly for your call, Ray. You have a wonderful day. See you at 3. Let me go to Augie. Come on in, Augie.
When you were talking about Bezos and Zuckerberg regretting, I was thinking about the Philadelphia Union leader who was for Trump, and he's also regretting it because Trump is going after the unions and talking about laws. Laws never stop anything. They just make things illegal. And we got so many more Americans in jail, more than any other country, any communist country, in jail, not because they've been convicted, but because they've been alleged or charged with a crime that they haven't been even proven yet, but they're still in jail because they can't pay bail. And as far as things being shipped overseas, it doesn't have to do with politics. It has to do with the CEOs, greedy CEOs, that send all our jobs and close down our plants. It made me think about when I was in the Air Force back in the 70s. I got my blue uniform, and then I retired. And I was thinking, well, maybe I like to be buried with my blue uniform. Well, my son, who was in the Coast Guard, wanted to alter it to put the current stripes on it. And he took it to a tailor at a military base. And the tailor said, oh, no, you don't want to alter this uniform. It was made by Americans, but look at the quality of the uniform that you had. The uniforms now are made overseas. They're lower quality. You don't want to alter that old American uniform. It was made by Americans who really cared about the military and the uniforms they were making for the American military men and women.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I ought to ask Brian too if he still believes the Tesla things that happened were terrorism, when Bezos still calls it vandalism.
Right.
But he calls it trans vandalism because the Republicans are going after trans people. They don't realize trans people are people. They're human beings. They're Americans, but they're going after them. And somebody said the trans are the appetizers. The rest of us are on the menu also.
You know,
But
they
that's
all, I
something
mean, you know, I got to go, Augie, but you're so right. You know, first they came for the gays, then they came for the blacks, then they came for this. And, you know, finally, I said nothing. I said nothing as they did that. And finally they came for me. And by then there was nobody to stand up for me, you know. So you nailed it on the head, my dear brother. You nailed it on the head. I got to take a few more calls, Augie. Thank you so kindly. And thank you for all you do, brother. We'll talk later. All right.
Thanks.
All
Bye-bye.
right, let's go to brother Bruce. Come on in, Bruce. Come on in.
Good morning, Alberto.
Good morning, my
Good
brother.
morning.
Talk to me.
I'll be fast. First, thank you, Augie. I appreciate that call. What I learned in school was presidents, because nobody knows everything, they had access to the very best minds before making a decision. You can take all the economists in the world that believe in what Trump's doing, put them in the back of a checkered cab and have room for luggage. The other thing I want to say is I know what Molly Cook had for breakfast. She threw some bacon in the pan and had a fried egg. I'm done. Sorry.
I knew, you know, something told me something was going to come out of that one, and you did it. Thank you, Bruce. You have a wonderful rest of your day. I want to give a big salute to Uju M. Says, hey, thank you for all that you do. Finally upgraded. Thank you, my dear brother. Appreciate that. Donald, well, before Donald, I want to say welcome aboard. I saw some about Lee the Bearcat from Austin, Texas in the chat. I also want to say, Glenn, give me a break, Glenn. I love you, man. But remember what we spoke about. We're all going in the same directions. We have different paths. Let's support each other. And yes, I get it. I get it. I get it. All right, let's go to brother Donald.
Good morning, Alberto. How are you today?
I am doing fine, Donald. How you doing? I mean, it brightens my day to hear. Let's see what my favorite MAGA is going to talk to me about today.
Okay, we need to do a revamp. You need to do Egberto Willis starring in that Errol Flynn movie. What was it, Robin Hood? But you need to be the main character. It's
Oh,
not stealing from the rich. It's not the rich. It's just the sorry people. You need to come up with some new words. It's like when I see these shorts, like Bezos. Oh, we were going to get knee pads because we were assembling stuff in the garage, and one of the workers with me or somebody else. He's like, oh, get a table, and then is that person still with him today? These people that are doing these interviews and all this other stuff, they never ask them, is that person still with you today? With his stocks options, he must be doing really good because he was with you from the start. Start calling them out, because the way he destroyed eBay and everything else, and the way Walmart's gone into it, none of them hold anything in stock. They direct ship from China to you, but nobody's calling them out on it. We need
well,
smarter people.
you heard me call him out on that today. You heard me
out.
call him out exactly on that today, right?
You go after him, Robin Hood.
All right. Thank you, Don. Thank you.
I want the green pointed hat and the bow and arrow.
Thank you, Donald. Hey, Donald, you're going to be wearing a blue hat pretty soon. When I say blue, I'm not talking blue for Democratic Party, but blue for progressivism. Thank you, brother. We have a talk later, all right?
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Brother Brian. Come on in, Brian. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. Thanks for all the volunteer work everybody does for the station.
Thank you, brother.
Speaking
Peace.
of that, what is the net worth of Pacifica Radio?
I don't have that offhand right now. You can always pull our 990 and kind of have an idea of what that is. It's a 501c3. So
Its net worth is about 4.5 million, I think. Hard to
no, it's
track down,
quite no. Pacifica is a hell of a lot more than that. No. It's a lot more than that. But go ahead.
And you work for free?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a reason why.
Okay. Because you're working, somebody's working off your back, right?
No,
that's not really
no. Let me explain, okay? And that's a good thing that you brought up there, though, and I think it's good for people to understand. Some rich guy long time ago left an endowment for Pacifica Network. I can't remember his name, and I should be ashamed for that. Left an endowment for us, and out of that monies, we get to build transmitters and buildings and so forth, where we can do this good task. All right. And we work with volunteers, because if it were set up as a regular corporations where you have to pay a whole lot of people, right? We couldn't afford to do what we do. Now, some of our stations have big people that are making salaries. WBAI in New York and KPRK, I mean KTR in both Berkeley and LA, they get better pay than we do here on at KPFT because of rules for unions, etc. But we are happy. All of us here are happy because what we're trying to do is move knowledge forward. And a lot of us are activists, a lot of us are musicians, and that's what we actually want to do. We're community serving people, and no, the Pacifica itself is not taking advantage of us, because there isn't a Pacifica paying shareholder money. There isn't a Pacifica paying executive bonuses or anything like that. Continue, Brian.
Okay, it was President Clinton that signed NAFTA. Bush
You're
initiated
correct.
it. Clinton signed it.
You're correct.
Clinton signed it.
Yes.
North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yes.
He signed it. He could have vetoed it. He didn't have to do it.
Brother,
Okay?
Neil, I mean, hold on. You're correct. Let me give you your kudos. You're correct. I wrote a book called "As I See It: Class Warfare: The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom." I don't take if a Democrat, a neoliberal Democrat, does something that is wrong, I point that out. It is Clinton who also got signed a bill that got rid of Glass-Steagall that caused the 2008 crash. I've pointed that out in my books as well. So I'm very consistent in laying blame where blame needs to be laid. Next point.
Okay, as far as the shipbuilding,
yes,
there's a huge shipbuilder in Trinidad Tobago. They made
Tobago.
Tobago, okay. Now, I worked on that ship.
Okay.
It was about 70% complete. They towed it from Kabongo to Ingleside's Corpus Christi to finish the ship.
Okay.
So the point about all this shipbuilding being overseas is incorrect. It's still being built here to our standards.
I don't know what's the point of what you're trying to say though, Brian.
Somebody said the shipbuilding needs to be subsidized. Is this true? You want the government
know. I don't know about ships, but let me tell you. Okay, look. Government is subsidizing so much right now, but I don't know what you're talking about ships, to be honest with you. But let me just tell you that I hope you have the same fervor for the subsidies that go to oil companies, the same fervor that goes to the subsidies for the big grain companies that snuffle the small farmer. Because the government is a bastion of subsidies for rich corporations. But continue, sir.
Okay, I'm glad you built up the big farmers. Who is the biggest farmer in the United States right now?
ADM and all the others. Look, I don't know. I don't know what he owns. Does he own a lot of ADM or something like that? I don't know. Does he?
No, he owns farmland, a lot of it.
And what? And you know, the guy in West Texas owns hundreds of thousands of acres that they stole from the Indians. You want to take that away too?
He didn't steal it from the Indians. The Mexicans stole it from the Spanish conquerors.
And then he stole it back, right? Brother, it's all stolen. But anyway, thank you, Brian. Gotta go. But thank you, my brother, for bringing up several subjects, and some of them that I actually love to talk about. Thank you, brother. We'll talk tomorrow. Peace. All right.
Okay. There's that music again.
Oh, it's 56. All right. Go ahead, studio.
I was not sure. I was trying to follow Brian, but I got confused, so I gave up. So, Brian, have a good day. Jack, what you got?
They are called terror ifs.
Very good. Very good, brother. Very good. Anyway, folks, I got to get out of here. Remember, the rest of the show is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. You can talk to me directly, email me directly at kpft@politicsdoneright.com, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. I will eventually get to your email. I love you guys. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
You're listening.